Are there homeless professors? This is a really interesting topic that I wanted to talk about. And the answer is a little bit more complicated than you thought it would be. And I want to talk about that. So hang with me here. So, do I know a lot of homeless professors? I actually don't know any homeless professor. Do I know PhD students and adjunct professors that could be making a lot more? Absolutely. They're extremely talented human beings that have already passed several thresholds, and the market is just not valuating. Not thinking about universities, and I want you to sort of think of a different area that has a structure, and that is the creative industries. That's where you're writing you look at authors, for example, book authors, you look at artists, you look at any number of industries that are very similar to this, musicians, right? There's a moment where they're doing poorly, and the ones that stick with it, they can do well, some of them don't, right? But for the most part, if you stick with it long enough, you have sort of a survival thing that goes on. Stick with it long enough, you do okay. So I want to specifically talk to those individuals that are homeless or on the verge of homelessness. If they are a professor or they are, doing research in some sort of way, first of all, you're going to be okay, and you are going to do just fine with who you are. I want you to know this. As you go into these moments, know that you're going to do okay. But there's two things that I want you to really think about. First of all, think about whether this is actually worth it, right? So if you're not bringing in enough money coming in, I urge you to go look for other opportunities in the marketplace. There are a lot of opportunities that exist, and for your specific field, you just have to think about how you frame what you're actually doing, and think about it in a slightly different way than coming head on, right? So there are professions, there are PhDs in certain fields that don't do not that well, right? Like they really don't. My field, so I'm in a business school, tends to be on the higher side of things. And there's other ones that are not doing as well that many people probably know about, right? I'm just going to call it basket weaving right now. It's kind of that's a derogatory term, but what I'm suggesting is for pop culture is these ones that people think are irrelevant. They're not irrelevant at all. I want you to think about how you can use these applications in different ways. Like some of the ones that you think are the least relevant. So, doing a PhD in English. Well, what are the most popular software? What's the most popular software things that are going on right now? Right? It's AI, artificial intelligence, natural language processing. It's thinking about all these things that are related to language. So figure out a way to work in other opportunities, right? And if it's not working out for you, go find those opportunities broadly. Like, you're freaking talented, right? Like, I want everybody to know that. I want you to register and think about that. Like, I am very talented. Find those opportunities. Now, that's one side of the story, right? Is looking for those opportunities. And I want you to, if you are on that right now at this moment, and it feels like, oh my gosh, like I'm just not going to make it, look for those opportunities, list it out. I want you to rationally, so think down on a piece of paper, write down on a piece of paper or Excel spreadsheet the different careers that you can go into, and list it based on most lucrative to least lucrative. But actually look into the numbers. I want you to do a little bit of research, spend a few nights doing some research for 5, 6, 7 hours of actually looking at the careers. Go on to, salary.com or whatever, I don't know what it's called, but those different things, or LinkedIn, and look that up. Then once you've found that target thing you want to go into, then narrow down and start finding those opportunities in those specific areas. So there's that. On the other side, I want you to think about, so often financial troubles are not necessarily because of the supply side or how much money you're making and the revenue that you're generating. It's often how much you're actually spending. right? And that spending portion of things can get out of control. And it's easy to get out of control. I know that this is like very difficult for people to think about, but if you look at very simple things like managing the amount of, looking at all the payments, for example, that you have, if you total it up, payments are usually really large. So you can find alternatives in what's called a secondary market. So things that are secondhand that are just as good and they serve the purpose just as well. It's often a bunch of marketing, right? I realize, so I'm sitting in a Tesla right now. I realize the sort of irony with this. I sat in a 2011 Mazda CX-7 for a long time, or an old car that the car before that we had for 14 years. It was the one that I drove was a Civic. We had it for 14 years. It was really, the muffler was blown out. It didn't function that well. We saved up for this. We saved up for this car. And it took a long time before we could actually get there. So part of what you're thinking and feeling at this moment, if you feel like you're a homeless professor, is feeling a bit out of control. So thinking about some of the payments that you have, right, other than the real necessities, like super real necessities, think about how you can get those under control, right? Like any payments, credit cards, homeowner insurance, those kind of things, they really do add up very quickly. And thinking about how you can get those under control and push those as hard as you can to see whether you actually need those particular things, right? And often you don't. It actually is the case you don't. And I want you to think about credit cards, for example. That's a big one, right? The credit card companies, they know what they're doing. They are a very, very there's a lot of money to be made there, and they know how to trick and dupe people in various different ways to make sure that you overpay in various different ways. So be careful. Those will get you, right? So think about how you can remove those expenses so that you can do okay, right? And I want you to really take that step back of thinking about, how do I get this under control? So what would I do? I would sort of suggest you're running your own company. You're a sole proprietorship. How do people get companies out of control, in control? Is they start writing things out on pieces of paper. This is what's going to happen, and they walk through it. They have a target, right? So pick a really, really tiny target that you are. So next month, right? You're panicking. Been there. Trust me, very much been there during graduate school. Is not so fun. Pick a target, right? Whatever that target is, and start working at that, but a tiny, tiny target. So that target might be, I am going to target paying an extra $5 on my mortgage, for example. Well, then you target paying the $5 next month and figuring out a way how to get that $5 under control. It means maybe not spending as much, going out, very simple things that make a difference. You can survive just fine eating peanut butter sandwiches and carrot sticks for a very long time, which is typically my lunch anyways. Doing those things really does pay off in the long run. Grabbing a coffee is expensive. Making your own coffee, it pays off, right? And if you think about this, so let's say 2 days a week, right? If you're targeting, how can I pay off an extra $5 on my mortgage, for example, or have an extra $5? It's 2 coffees, right? You pass on those 2 coffees, you make your own 2 coffees a month, and then you put it onto the $5 of your mortgage or your lease or whatever, and that's how you actually get there, is those little things. And that's where I want you to target $5, $10, some tiny, tiny target today in terms of how much you can save or get to. And you do that this month. The reason why I want you to do that is you will feel completely under control and it'll feel very good. Don't go too gung-ho. It's like a diet. Don't go too gung-ho. It's going to be too hard to do. But if you target some tiny thing, I want you to feel how amazing that feels when you get there. All right, so are there homeless professors? Not too many that I know of, but that doesn't mean that there are moments where it's not scary, and it's tough. And so that's where you need to think about bringing more money in. You know, screw what people sort of think that you should do. You do what's good for you. And then on the other side, thinking about how you can get the financial, your sort of costs under control. And that's where I want you to think about, let's try to save $5 next month. $5, that's it. Figure out a way to save those $5. And then come back, write some comments in a month from now and tell me how that feels. All right, take care. Have a wonderful day.